inviting me to speak here, and also thank you to those yesterday who came along and gave such brilliant feedback that encouraged them to have me do this again. So for anyone who heard me yesterday, apologies, because I've been asked to talk along the same lines as I did yesterday. So let's see how much of it I can squeeze into I'll try and narrow it down a bit so that more people can get on after me. So firstly, who am I? I'm Doug Moore, go under the pseudonym Vegangelical. You can find me on YouTube, Insta, Twitter, Facebook, all the usual social media channels. I've even got a TikTok now, which is pretty good for a Luddite like me. A little bit about my background. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey to a dark place and hopefully bring you out into the light and with some hope at the end, because we all want to feel a little bit positive after all of the stuff we delve into and we witness as animal rights activists and as vegans. We see some horrendous stuff, experience some horrendous stuff, so it's nice to take a positive look at the end. So that's what I'm hoping to do with this. So my background is I worked in slaughterhouses, I was a butcher, an animal farmer, and I worked in what is euphemistically known as meat processing as well. So you name it, animal agriculture wise, I've probably done it, and I've certainly witnessed it. And this industry didn't simply teach me how to kill, cut up and otherwise exploit animals, it also taught me how to suppress emotional, psychological and spiritual responses that ought to come naturally to people who are exposed to those industries. If you're unable to do that in those industries, you'd never last more than a day. In fact, I saw lots of people come and go. Quite often within the first hour of trying out those jobs, they'd be gone. Unless, of course, you're a psychopath, and believe me, there are a few of those in those industries as well. So that's where I come from. So from the age of 16 I was doing that for a number of years. I also came from a background of sports, so it's quite a macho background. I was a boxer, rugby player, martial arts, so there was a lot of machismo. So when I was placed at a slaughterhouse, it was kind of a test of my manhood, if you like, that people thought I wouldn't be able to handle it. I had to prove them wrong, and that kind of toxic masculinity affected a lot of people in my generation. So we thought we were being macho, but actually it really is a far more manly thing to be kind and compassionate, as I've learned over the years. But that's what I've come from, and a lot of people ask me questions when they find out about this background. Things like, what changed? What opened your eyes? What made you a vegan and or an animal rights activist? And how do you cope with your past? So I'll be looking a little bit at those, and finally how far we've come and whether progress is still happening. So I'll also say a little bit about how I'm known. I'm known in the vegan community a little bit because I've done a lot of media, so I've been on TV, radio, internet, worldwide, locally and nationally. Probably most famously was interviewed by Piers Morgan, and yes, he is as much of a prat as you might think he is. So I got quite a high profile in terms of media, and I also do lots and lots of outreach and behind the scenes some direct action as well. So for example, I do a lot of sabbing, but in the months when sabbing's not on, I go to shooting estates and I try and locate and destroy these things. Snares, traps. I couldn't bring traps with me because it was a little bit difficult bringing them on the train, but you'll find these things littered throughout hunting estates. Some of them are legal, some of them aren't. They're supposed to close to there and stop. Some of them are free running, they're illegal. What they do is they indiscriminately catch any animal that is passing. We've found dogs, cats, all sorts. In fact, this summer, just a couple of weeks ago, I found 3 cats that were being used as bait on a shooting estate. Now, the pictures I took and the videos I took have been shared to the appropriate places, I didn't post them on social media because it's too graphic and too disturbing. I don't do that, so if any of you follow my social media, you'll see that I don't post graphic stuff, but I do talk about it, because I think it's important people understand what happens to animals. And when people say shooting estates are okay and they don't do this or they don't do that, they don't understand what shooting estates involve. It's not just killing thousands of birds, which they do that as well, after shipping them in, after being factory reared in Europe. They ship them across, shoot them, but they also trap and kill corvids, birds of prey, wild mammals, and even domestic pets, which go disappear quite a lot. People wonder where their cats go, and even dogs. Quite often they've got into a shooting estate and they've been snared. What happens is, again, people will go along, they'll knock them on the head or shoot them, and then they'll quite often either bury them, burn them, or use them as bait for their traps. So what we've done is we've set up some cameras to try and catch them doing that, rather than take the animals away, because they'll just deny they did it anyway. You have to catch them in the act, which fortunately we've seen some success this year with North London hunt sabs catching the guy who stabbed a fox to death with a pitchfork. That was through secret filming, and yeah, hopefully that's how we get them. So hunts are on the run, literally. A lot of them are closing down, and it's success from all kinds of tactics, not just going out hunt sabbing, but doing that kind of clandestine action. So anyway, that's a little bit about me and what I get up to. What changed? So when my son was born, I had a realisation that I could do much better in life, and I was well aware that a low-paid job in animal agriculture was not the peak of my abilities. So I decided to go back into education, went to college, then went to university, and thought I need to do better with my life. So that was one of the things that changed. I also reconnected with animals because I'd always considered myself an animal lover, even while I was in those disgusting businesses. It might sound ridiculous, so try and get in the heads of these people who work in these places when we're trying to close them down, trying to persuade people to get out of it. People can work in them and still consider themselves animal lovers. They're that dissociated from what they're doing. So I was making a reconnection with animals. I got involved with hunt sabbing, so even while I was still non-vegan, I was out sabbing, and back then in the 90s that wasn't uncommon. Vegans were very rare, and most of the hunt sabs were either omnivorous or vegetarian. I think I met one vegan, so that exposed me to a vegan. I met a girl at university who I quite liked, who happened to be vegan, so that inspired me as well. Also, one of my professors in philosophy, he was vegan, so I had these vegan role models, and that led to what opened my eyes. So in a way, philosophy opened my eyes. So I was studying ethics, and during one of my summer breaks I found a book by Peter Singer called Practical Ethics, and as I was reading it, I came to a realization that if I wanted to live consistently with my ethics, then I needed to go vegan for a start and start speaking up for animals. It would not be enough to go vegetarian or pescatarian or flexitarian or any other excusitarian. I needed to go vegan and become an animal rights advocate, otherwise I would not be living in alignment with my morals. So there was that. There was meeting animal rights people and vegans. I got involved with anti-vivisection campaigns, other animal exploitation campaigns like the Cruel Circus and things like that. There were specific projects I got involved with at university, quite a few, too numerous to mention really, because I'm trying to be brief with my time here. So why vegan animal rights activist? As I said, consistency. I wanted to be consistent, but another big thing for me, because of my background and what I've done, was about atonement. So when you've witnessed what I've witnessed and been responsible for what I've been responsible for, it's an incredible difficult thing to deal with. And every day since then I have been atoning. I'm still atoning to this day. anything and everything I do is the very least I can do, because whatever I suffer in terms of personal trauma, emotional breakdowns and the rest of it is absolutely nothing to what those animals have gone through and are going through. So please don't feel sorry for me or anyone else in that industry. Feel sorry for the animals, and it's up to me and other people in that industry to atone and try to do the best we can to try and make up for what we can never make up for. So which is why to the end of my days I will be atoning for my behaviour. And the other reason of why vegan is, to me, veganism is at the very least we can do. It's a moral baseline. So once we recognise the abuse that animals are going through, the exploitation and the harm and the suffering and all the rest of it, if we don't go vegan, how do we live with ourselves? Because we know what happens to produce eggs, to produce milk and dairy products, to produce flesh products, and to produce clothing, to exploit animals for entertainment, so-called sport and all the rest of it. We know what they go through. So once you know that, the very least we can do is go vegan, because that means doing the best we can to stop participating in that exploitation and murder and abuse of animals. And as that is a moral baseline, the very least we can do after that is to become an advocate for animals. And I know that very many people have limitations to what they can do, whether that's because of social anxiety or physical difficulties, but everyone can do something. Whether that's just talking about veganism or animal rights, whether that's wearing slogans on their t-shirts or on their bags or stickers on their car, that kind of thing, whether it's going out in the street and outreaching, talking to people about the benefits and the harm done to animals, or whether it's getting involved with direct action, kicking indoors and rescuing animals and all the rest of it. There's always something we can do. Not everyone's cut out for each of those things. Not everyone likes to get up on stages and talk. For me, it's always nerve-wracking. I never know how it's going to go. One day I can give a talk and I'll be fine. The next I can talk about something that's traumatic and I can burst out crying. I never know. So it takes a lot to do all the things that whatever you're doing, whether it just be wearing a t-shirt and talking about stuff in a little cafe and people are overhearing, it doesn't matter. The fact is you're doing something. If you think you can do more, then you can do more. So I'd encourage anyone to get involved with their local activism groups and try and get involved with as much as you can. Try different things, whatever works for you, whatever tribe is yours, you will find them. So the next point is, how do I cope with my past? So this is a really difficult one. So I've got loads and loads of coping strategies. People like Alice Bruff has contacted me to ask me how I cope with my past, because she has similar traumas to me to deal with, although she worked as a vet in those industries. And other people have been in touch saying, I don't know how you do it. And I have loads and loads of coping strategies, but the honest answer is none of them work. They sort of distract me for a short while, but I still have sleepless nights, I still have nightmares, I have depression intermittently, suicidal thoughts and even attempts, and all of these things you will go through and should expect to go through if you're involved in those industries. So those people who think it's okay to work in those industries or someone else is doing it for them, you're setting these people up for a lifetime of trauma themselves. And not just that, there's a knock-on effect that I didn't talk about yesterday, but I'll say a little bit about today. So there are other victims. So I've got a friend who's a policeman, and he works in an area where he has to deal with child abuse, sexual abuse, that kind of thing. And he's told me that he's always constantly shocked at how many people involved in animal agriculture are perpetrators in that field. And he said he can't understand why more of his colleagues like him don't go vegan, because they know the consequences of animal abuse. So he's always advocating from within his own unit for people to take a compassionate approach to what they eat and how they live. He said one of the questions they always ask victims is, did the perpetrator ever kick the family pet, ever abuse the family pet? And the reason they're asking that is there's a direct link between abusing non-human animals and abusing humans. So it's not just the animals that are suffering, humans too. So you get a lot of abusers who have worked in these industries. So I guess I'm fortunate in that all I've done is I've gone through some violent stuff. I didn't get involved in some of those more despicable things, thankfully, but it's a small step. Lots of people did and do. I've got no pride to say I've quite often gone out into pubs when I was younger and I'd stick a nut on someone for looking at me wrong. These violent behaviours were learned, because if you think about it, if you're in an industry where your job is to control an innocent being that can't protect themselves, then when you're out in society or in a relationship or any of those circumstances, how easy is it to make the jump to someone else who cannot protect themselves from you as theoretically a stronger physical specimen, from exerting your will on them? And lots of people involved in that do. There are also lots and lots of people who self-harm and suicide and the rest of it involved in these industries. Farmers have the highest suicide rate. I've seen people kill themselves involved in slaughterhouse work. I've seen all kinds of horrific things that, again, I didn't talk about yesterday. So this is all the dark side that I told you I was going to take you to. However, there is a positive. So when I say I have strategies, I do have strategies, and they do distract me for a while. So coming to things like this, surrounding yourself with beautiful people and with beautiful animals, and reconnecting with those animals. So for me, the one recurring thing that stops me sleeping at night is if I quite often will try and close my eyes and I can still hear the screams of the pigs I won't give you credit. If you want to hear about what happened to the pig, go to my YouTube channel and I describe it. I don't show footage, as I said. Go to the YouTube channel, I describe exactly what I'm talking about, and it's horrific, and I've never seen or heard anything so horrific in all my life. The only thing that that trumps the abuse that I've seen happen to pigs is the stuff that happens in vivisection laboratories. That's the only thing. So that kind of thing keeps me awake at night, but I can then come to a place like this. See, we fed the pigs this morning, and it was a beautiful experience. Holding chickens, these chickens that are one of the most abused animals in the world. The farmers, and the farm workers, because they're so stressed and they're so busy, they're kicking these animals out of the way. They're grabbing them, throwing them, hurling them, because they're just trying to get them into cages and into sheds. So to be able to reconnect with these animals in a place like this is a beautiful experience, and meeting people at vegan festivals, meeting people online who've got shared views and outlooks, talking through, getting opportunities like this to talk through my trauma. It's great because it helps. So all of these things are really good. Doing activism. I run lots of activism events in my local area and across the south coast. And it's all positive stuff. And when I look now at how far we've come, so I went vegan in 1996. So it's too late, really. I was 27. I wish I'd gone vegan much sooner. So from 1996, it was impossible to get plant-based milks in the shops then, at least where I lived. I think there was one brand you could get, but I never saw it. And so I just learned to cook with raw ingredients, and I'm a really good cook now, thankfully. But if you look at the last 7 years, the growth in 7 years ago, I checked the stats, less than 0.5% of the UK population considered themselves vegan. Just 7 years later, it's now 7% who describe themselves as vegan. Now I can look at that figure and question it and say, what do you mean by vegan? I think they're talking about people who eat a vegan diet, rather than what I would call a vegan, which is someone who does everything they can to avoid harm to animals. Because if there's a way you can avoid it, and you choose to do it anyway, then you're not vegan, you're plant-based. So that's not being judgmental, that's just being descriptive of what the term vegan means. I think it's being misused, which is why I quite often use the term animal rights activist over vegan, even though to me all animal rights activists ought to be vegan. As I said earlier, veganism is the moral baseline from where we start. But the other good news is, anyone who heard John Curtin speaking yesterday would have heard a really great talk about the history of vivisection and the animal rights movement. What a huge movement it was. If you look back to the 1990s, there were thousands of people turning up at events to try and close down these places, but laws came in the early 21st century which hammered down on these kind of protests, and so it went really quiet. But we're seeing a resurgence, we're seeing more direct action. You've got DXC, you've got Animal Freedom Movement, you've got Camp Beagle and associated groups from that. You've got all kinds of things going on, the Animal Liberation Front doing more stuff. So it's great to see a resurgence in direct action as well. So for me, there's plenty of good news out there. It's not all doom and gloom. So I'm just going to end with encouraging you to get out and do whatever it is that's your thing. Even if it's just chatting to people locally, chatting to your family. If you have a try at one or two different things, you will find something that you really enjoy, that you're good at. For me, I just love direct action now. That's my tribe. So I love going out sabbing. I wish I didn't have to, but I love doing it. I love disrupting, dismantling and destroying shooting estates, paraphernalia. I love kicking doors in and saving animals that otherwise other professional organisations would leave there. That's something that I enjoy doing. You might enjoy something more direct than that, or you might enjoy just talking to people, advocating, making great food and showing people how good vegan food can be. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're doing, be proud of it, as long as you're doing something. If anyone's interested in seeing any of my links, come and see me at the end. I've got cards and you can have a look at some of my stuff. But thank you again for your patience and listening to me 2 days in a row.
That's great, thank you, Doug. So it's Doug Moore, or otherwise known as